Welcome to Nonprofit Network, powered by Stokes Auction Group. We are a group of fundraising professionals that specialize in raising funds to improve communities of all sizes.
Okay, well, hello everybody and welcome. We are super excited to be back.
Yes, we are. We are back. It is May something. We
16th.
are starting to get good weather, and boy, are we happy about it.
Or no, it's not.
This is Kelly Schenfeld over there.
I'm Kelly Schenfeld.
My name is Shelby Stokes.
Polly Schenfeld here. Good afternoon, fellow fundraiser fanatics.
And we're going loose today, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, we kind of are liking this format, actually. We're kind of doing a little bit of a question and answer situation, and it's kind of just changing it up. You know, we've been doing this for a year now, and we haven't missed much. And so that's been kind of cool. You know, we've stuck with it, and we're going to continue to stick with it.
True story.
And that's kind of exciting. And so lots of things have happened in the year. And I'm just really happy that we're all together and still doing this after a year. I think that's a big deal.
Oh my gosh, right? Absolutely.
I think it's a big deal. Yeah.
It is a huge deal.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's been fun to kind of hone in on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And watching the creativity kind of blossom and grow has really been a fun experience.
And now we're kind of back out doing it again, right? And we're busy and our weekends don't belong to us anymore. They belong to the organization. So, you know, things are rolling. And so I have a few more questions for you.
I brought some questions
auctioneer.
for you.
Yeah.
Questions for auctioneers. And we have a question for you when you're done.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we do.
We do. Well, so far this season, I am curious what has been, because I know something that they're doing a lot more of is themes.
Right.
So what has been your favorite theme that you saw that the audience really interacted with, as well as your chairs got into it, and your EDs and the volunteers and everybody? What's been your best and your favorite theme?
I got two.
You got two? Okay, we'll sandwich. You go first.
The 80s theme.
That is also mine.
Was it? And it's just like it. I don't know. It just fits right in. I mean, that's the music that I grow up with. That's the time that I grow up with, and I'm not above putting a wig on and going out there in a Motley Crue shirt.
Yeah.
And doing it.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like, it's so varied. Like, people are really creative when it comes to 80s themes parties right now.
Yeah.
Like, the last one I was at, we had somebody dress up like Howard Stern for 80s night.
And
really?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Hilarious.
It is hilarious.
For sure. Yeah. The
music's awesome.
The music is awesome.
The music's awesome.
Do you find that the crowd can get into the 80s easier than, like, you know, 50s, 60s, or things like that? Because I love those two.
I mean, I think there's a lot of nostalgia, for the 80s right now, which is why it's, like, really coming into its own. Like, we've seen 80 themed stuff before, but now it feels like people are really, really into it, unlike they were.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right? People seem to really get into it. Like, one of them that I went to what was an 80s theme, and it wasn't really accurate to the decade, but I thought it was really cool. They came as Kiss.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Kiss is
the 70s.
It is the late 70s.
But Kiss was in the 80s, but they'd taken the makeup off.
Kiss still believes they're...
Yeah.
They still think they're rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen them perform recently?
I have not seen them perform recently. However, have I seen them perform recently? Anyway, maybe.
It was a crazy night,
It's
folks.
a crazy night! Obviously, I don't remember.
It had to be.
It had to be. So you say 80s theme, so your volunteers got into it, your auction chairs, and everybody got into it. So in your pre-event meeting that you have, because that's one thing that we do at Stokes Auction Group, is we have a pre-event meeting with our chairs, people that are running it, or EDs and stuff like that. What are some suggestions you would give them if they were doing an 80s theme auction that you see work for revenue building? Not just getting dressed up, but so you had to have seen some revenue builders within that 80s theme, right? Did they use the theme? See, they do not know the questions I'm asking them. This is what the beauty of this is.
This is so
very fun for me.
We'll readjust. Oh, yeah, so beautiful. So, 80s themed fundraising.
Revenue generators.
Costume contest.
Yes.
Costume contest. And what would you tell them on your pre-event call to do with that?
How far in advance are we talking?
Well, your pre-event call. I mean,
Yeah.
what are they? You know, and they're.
I mean, I would say advertise to the school that you're going to give away a prize for the 80s themed night.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and like try to get them engaged. And what'll happen is like people will really kind of come up and celebrate others for dressing up, and it's really a cool aspect that you can play with.
What if you were to say it's $10 to enter the costume contest?
Sure.
Because that's a revenue generator, right? $10 to enter the
Mhm.
costume contest, and only those that paid their $10 they're in. Very good idea.
Usually you have like 3 judges.
Yeah.
Wander around early in the silent, determine which of the costumes are the best,
Mhm.
and you'll narrow it down like to 4 or 5, right? Then, as quick as you can, you'll set up little baskets, $5 for a raffle ticket. Each raffle ticket
goes in there.
constitutes a vote. You can buy as many as you want. You can put it in, the Gene Simmons guy, or you can
that's
put it,
really
you
good
can put it
idea.
in the
I like
Howard
that a
Stern
lot.
basket.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the silent close, before the live starts, those judges go and they count all the tickets.
That's fantastic.
And the
I like that a
organization
lot.
gets all the money,
Yeah.
and then you bring the winners, all 5 of them, up onto the stage,
Yeah.
and then we determine who the winner is.
Yeah. So would
Then
you say
we're
at
gonna
these
have a prize.
80s themed parties, I mean, we're just going to stick on that since you both agreed to it, that there's probably a lot of libation happening that night. Would you agree that we're probably partying it up pretty good at these events? Would you say that?
At all the ones I've been to, it has.
It has.
Every time I see an 80s
Especially.
event. Yeah. But also I find that like the schools that kind of get a little bit more inebriated are normally the ones that dress up more.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That being said,
Yeah.
you've got inebriated people in the room. What do you do if you have somebody back out of the item that they bid on?
Oh boy.
And you know that they backed out of it because they didn't know that they were even bidding on it, possibly. How do you, as an auctioneer, handle that? Now, you've got ringmen in the room. You're going to send them over, and you're hoping that the ringmen are, you
Stuff
know.
moving in this room, guys.
No, I think we
Ghosts.
just caught a mouse or something over there. I heard him say,
I heard
"Help
something
me!
too.
It's now there's a ghost mouse in
There's
here.
a
It
ghost
was a
mouse.
mouse, now it's a ghost mouse. Don't
So-
you worry about it.
So what would you say to that?
What I mean, how do you handle a person that backs out? I mean, I would re-rack like very quickly is normally what I would do. Now, I mean, different circumstances play out the way they do, right?
Say re-rack. Say explain
Re-rack.
re-rack to people
Resell.
that are watching.
Resell.
This. Okay.
Resell an item.
Resell it.
But that's kind of my personality too. I'd roll up and somebody, sir, you bought it, $10,000. Congratulations. I didn't buy it. Oh, I had your bid at 10,000. No, you didn't. Okay, I didn't.
No, you did. It's
Well,
to be more like
I had
this.
you.
My-
Yeah. Okay. Didn't I have you at 9,000? Would you be okay honoring that bid with your backup bidder? And if not, like, okay, we're just going to start over. But you have to be able to do it in the moment.
Mhm.
And I think we had something play out this weekend where that opportunity was not allotted because the item was sold, and then later it was said no, that person actually didn't buy it. So you can't fix it in the moment because that information comes out later.
Yeah.
So I mean that wouldn't have helped that specific auctioneer this weekend, but at the end of the day, that's how I would try to execute that.
What do you say?
I totally agree. You absolutely have to not let it affect the overall mood of the evening.
Mhm.
You have to not let it get under your skin as an auctioneer because, I mean, let's be honest, that's one of the worst things that can happen.
Oh yeah,
When
definitely.
$2,500, you're in. Got it? Who gives 3? Nope. Sold $2,500. Sir, could I have your number?
Mm-hmm.
That really angers us because we understand and live the process. And if this person come to find out they're just there to have fun, or just help run the bid up,
Yeah.
then it's up to us to recognize that and just try to avoid that individual.
And
But
I think there's a couple things to unpack there, right? Like one, in this scenario we're specifically kind of dancing around, you're in a room that is very, very big. Like a lot of guests are there, so it's hard to manage a group of that size. We're also dealing with a situation where the audio is not understandable to the guests.
Right, which is a
So-
big challenge in a room of
Well, very
of
much so.
large numbers.
But us as
Oh, boy.
auctioneers,
Oh, boy.
20 grand, or 2 grand, all the way up to 10 grand, sold 10,000. Oh no, I was at 3. Well, I was saying 10. I was saying 10. You were in at 10 or 9 or whatever the number was. Like, that's what I was
No.
saying. We thought we were connected. Now there's a disconnect. And that's really, really frustrating. It
Yeah.
really is. But I also have to say that there is some responsibility of the bidder in this circumstance. Like what we are seeing in some rooms is that these guests can sometimes be very inebriated to the point where there's, I'm just helping. And you're like, sold $10,000. And they're like, no, I'm not helping anymore. And then you have to unwind the deal. And that's a waste of not only the auctioneer's time, that bidder's time, but that entire room. And I think that's the third thing you have to consider on top of the sound and the size of the room is your timeline. When you're trying to get through a ton of material in a 2-hour period, you don't have the luxury of reselling items 2 and 3 times. You just don't.
You don't.
And you want to remain connected to the audience. You don't want to make anybody angry.
Right.
You know, I would love to say, bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. We had you in the, you know.
I had a
$7,000
situation
ago.
where I was in a tough environment, tough sound, very, very bad sound. And there was a lot of ancillary noises going on with food
That's a
service
cool word.
and people talking.
Ancillary.
And I had an item, boom, sold it to my far right table, all the way as far right as could be from where I was. Sold $1,800. Can you hold your bid card up? Bid spotter's standing right there, and he's going like this, and I can see her going, and he's going, and I can see there's a conversation. So I gave it about 4 or 5 seconds, and then I said, oh, that's okay. We had a little bit of bidder's remorse. Let's just start over.
Yeah.
Well, she came up to me later and said, I don't appreciate you saying I had bidder's remorse. That made me look bad in front of all my friends at the table.
I mean,
Ma'am,
So
you
I
did look
learned
bad.
a lesson.
yeah.
I can't help that.
And it might have been partly because of my frustration because of all the other things that were happening. Because that's not something that I normally would say. I would say, all right, well, that's all right. Well, let's just start over. For some reason, I was like, right? And it backfired. And I learned a valuable lesson there.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that again.
Yeah. What do you do in that situation, though, where that backup? Because I've been in the situation. One of my earliest memories with Mark was when he threw me in the deep end. He didn't even give me those little water wings. He just flat tossed me in and said,
And look at you now. You're swimming on your own.
let's see how she does.
You're welcome.
Swimming in the deep end.
You are welcome.
Hey, when you get a little water wing or something. No. And he
Life
had me
preserver?
with the bulldog. And
Oh,
it was
boy.
like the second auction I had ever done. So this is 20 years ago. And this person, I said sold, and she stood up, or Mark said sold, and she stood up and said, this is not bleep bleep happening. And my eyes got like that. So my question to lead that is that, so you're going to have situations where you've got couples that are, one's drunk and one isn't drunk. And I know these are kind of weird topics, but they're really the topics that come up quite a bit, you know. What do you do to help your ringman, or if you're on your own there, you know, you try to educate people to be prepared for this. If this has happened, this is what you do. But if you have a scenario where you see one of the partners is loaded and the other isn't, when do you say, yes, I'm willing to sell that? Do you need them to agree that they're both buying it? Do you want, you know, marriage is important. You want them to go home happy, but how do you dance that dance? Because that's commonly the baseline of why somebody would back out of something.
I'd be very apprehensive about what I would say. I would be
Expand on that. What do you
I'd
mean?
be very careful about what I would say.
You wouldn't say, "Hey, the drunk at table 7."
If I saw some sort of an altercation between a husband and a wife, and I could see it from where I was, I wouldn't even go there.
Yeah.
I think I would
not even accept that.
I think I would say I'm pretty
What if they're
sure.
waving that card, though? What if they're waving that card?
Really? I'm
You're like-
so in.
you're
I'm
diving
so
right
in.
into
I'm
that.
diving right in the middle of it. Like, I really am.
Let them figure it out tomorrow.
No, well, kind of. I mean, it there's so many variables here. But, I mean, first things first, if you have a good ringman, go check him out. And then a couple items later, say, how'd it go? And after you're out of the moment, maybe it fell into place. You're also going to have, like, the ED or the person that is your contact for the auction know the players better than you. So send that individual in to see what's going on. And if you need to resell it, so be it. But like in terms of my initial response, I get right in it. Like, oh, what do you mean, ma'am? He was buying this for you. It's for the family. Like, what? Huh? You know, and just kind of play it out. You know, what I would caution any auctioneer of doing is like playing on the sex roles within a marriage. That used to be very hammed up back in the day, and I don't think that works in today's society.
No, because marriage happens within all kinds of groups.
Right. Well, I mean, just like there's been some bad auctioneer jokes that we've seen over the last couple of years that really play into like man of the house, women of the house type, like 50s rubber stamped roles, and that is not today. So anytime you're leaning into that kind of humor, I don't think it plays now. I caution against it. I'm not game for it. So shots fired.
Oh, you're laughing. You're laughing.
I love your tactic, and I can see where that would be useful in some of the experiences I've had. I guess I was kind of going down the road where I could see that this conversation was taking place, and there was some clearly visible anger there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I saw that, I'm like, ooh, I'm not going over there.
Yeah.
Or drunkenness. That's
but
the,
if it's drunkenness, so they're just like, kind of going, hey, honey, blah, blah, blah. That'd be perfect. Then you could run. I'm going to try that.
Well, and if somebody comes in and goes, no, don't take that person's bid because they're drunk. Don't take his bid because he's drunk. I'd be like, sir, are you drunk? Okay, you are. Ma'am, do you support this decision? You don't. Okay, you're going to talk it over. I'm going to go focus over here for a second. I'll be back in 3 minutes. And then just kind of like let that out of the blue. Okay, we figured it out over here? No, we haven't? All right. Okay, we're going to give you another 30 seconds. Just kind of like poke it, but don't get too involved because you can embarrass people. And then at the end, always celebrate the family, right? Like, so if you like push that person into a situation like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have bid, say, you know what? We couldn't have been able to raise the $5,000 without your help. So you did a lot to help the school tonight. Thank you. We appreciate you. We're going to celebrate. You sure? Yes. Boom. Like that's how I would find my way out of that scenario. But there's so many factors and personalities are so different that it's hard to paint it one color.
It is.
That's awesome.
It's very hard to paint it.
It's very difficult.
Because in my particular situation, he was all. I could not tell he was drunk either. And when she stood up and said that, I thought I was going to die. I did not know what in the devil I just did to this poor guy up on the mic. And at the time, we weren't married, so I was like, I don't know what is happening here. And I was with the Bulldog, so that helped. They kind of knew what was happening. And like, again, I was in school, but so that kind of caveats into the next question. You never know who the guest is connected to.
Correct.
You never know who the guest is connected to, and then you worry if you didn't handle a situation completely properly, and it comes back to find out later that this person is the ED's sister.
I'm going into one of those scenarios this weekend where last year in this room that I was at last year that I'm going back to this weekend, I had a donor that is a very, very generous contributor throughout the area I'm going to be in. He's going to be back in the room. And last year I did not follow as he instructed, not knowing who he was, doing what I thought was best for the room, and now I'm going to be put back in the situation with that person.
This story.
And it's going to be we're going to celebrate what he's doing for the schools. Is what we're going to do. I've had the luxury of working with 2 clients in this area, and this individual does great things in multiple communities, and we're going to celebrate him and thank him publicly and do the best we can to get him on board with the cause. But the scenarios you're talking about, when you don't know who you're talking to, is very true. So you try to keep it on the up and up and as positive as possible, but you're going to run into situations where that's not possible.
Yeah, you think so too?
Is this the lollipop story?
This is the lollipop story.
Okay, we'll tell you what it is later.
This is the lollipop story.
I don't care who you are. You made the right decision.
They brought me back, so
there you go. You're back in the room.
I didn't get fired, so
you've got an MC.
We'll see what happens next year. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens next year.
You've got an MC that's kind of leading the night a little bit. If you have an MC, that person is your lead for the night. And as far as moving the timeline along for everybody. So how do you educate your MC when you're in a situation like that? Yeah. Because, you have more information at that given moment than that particular MC does. You also have history in this situation.
I do.
So how do you educate your MCs, or do you educate your MCs on the crowd? If you're aware of the crowd and you know the crowd, and there's been some past things with the crowd, is it your obligation as the partner that's working with them to educate that MC on the night, the group, the evening, the stuff?
Yeah, I think you do. You got to give him a heads up, him or her. Hey, look, this could get a little rowdy.
This could be a little dicey. Yeah.
And if it does, move on. Let's roll on. I think that wouldn't you agree that that MC who's new to this room?
You know,
I've been here before. This could get a little dicey, but just roll with me. Okay?
Yeah,
we got this.
Yeah, you know, there's so many different circumstances that could play out that it's, you know, there's two ways of thought here, and I think that how do I make a long story short? Okay, so we do reports at the end of every auction where we submit our thoughts, improvements, and also we have a section that's called candid feedback. So we just let it roll as the auctioneer in the situation. We say whatever we want to say. We have chosen as a group not to share that candid feedback with next year's auction. And the reason that we have chosen to do that, next year's auctioneer, the reason we have chosen to do that is because I don't want to color your opinion on what played out last year this year.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So when you ask the question of, do you inform the MC of what played out last year? Yes, but. Don't give them all the details. Try to make them as comfortable as possible being the MC. But I don't know that you share all the information with them.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
No, that's probably there is no right answer, but
there is no right answer.
There is no right answer, but
what I will say, and kind of going back to your last point, you know, if you sell it to somebody and they back out, or it's a married couple and they were drunk and they didn't mean it, you know, your MC being able to dance after
is important.
It falls out is very important. Yeah. So in other words, sold $10,000. He didn't bid on that. All right, Paul. What's our next item? Ma'am, are you guys okay? Do I need to resell that package? Or so you can play damage control. But in situations that I've had with MCs that are not professionals or not as seasoned, they'll just be like, "Okay, Shelby, what's up? What are you doing over there, Shelby?" And it's like, just keep talking. Yeah. Whatever you do, just keep talking. Smoke and mirrors that way. Light them up. Set off a cannon. Whatever you got to do. Do not look over here. Yeah. So, I mean, in that scenario, you should tell your MC, like, if I stop talking, just keep dancing. Yeah. So,
I was going to point that on piggyback on your thought was it depends on the experience level of the master of ceremony.
Well said. Yep.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. Because if you're a newbie, you don't want to overwhelm them. They're already shaking in their spades boots anyway.
Gracious, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not throw too much at it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to leave you guys with one final question that's probably a little difficult to answer, but I kind of gave you a little heads up about it just because it is a difficult question to answer. You have an ED and a chair. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot in our podcast about the value of a chairperson, a quality chairperson, and what their position actually is, and it is to go out there and really get the money, get the sponsorships and things like that. If you really wanted your chair to be the ultimate chair, that's what that person does.
Right.
And then you've got the ED, which is the executive director, that is the one that typically hires us and brings us in, right? Let's say that the ED and the chair are not connecting that night. We don't know history. We don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. We don't know what's going on.
And we never do.
Yeah. But let's say it's an obvious disconnect, right. And it hampers us being able to go, like, for example, that could very well hamper us saying, "Oh my God, that dinner sold for $12,000. Go around there. Go see if we could double that," right? So those kinds of things hamper our success in the room. Mm-hmm. What do you do as an auctioneer when you're aware that the ED and the chairperson are not seeing eye to eye and one wants you to do something and the other doesn't? How do you handle that?
Do you have a specific example, or
no? We've all lived it.
Yeah,
we've all lived it in big scenarios and in little scenarios.
So I think individuals that are auctioneers or presenters in these events, the ones that have stuck around and continue to keep doing it, they are a special kind of chameleon, if you will. Like, you got to really be able to take in all the factors that are playing out in front of you and react accordingly. In this scenario, when you have an ED and a development director, is a chair.
It could be a development director and a chair.
Yeah, you have fractured leadership. Is essentially what you're going with. It's always my goal to figure out what each one of their motives are. Like, what is your North Star? Well, I was going to do a wine poll and I think it should work. Oh, well, I think it's not going to work. Okay, well, let's offer it advertise it the best we can and adjust accordingly, right? I think that us as presenters in these rooms and for these events, we have to keep in mind that we are there to raise the most money for the organization that we can.
Yeah.
And there are some people that get so caught up in stuff that doesn't matter that you really have to roll with that idea, even though if you think it's not the best idea, but ultimately you got to bring it back to the organization, because these people that walked in are not just like there because the ED told them to be there.
Right.
They're there to help. So if you can get the ED or that individual to kind of park their ego, I think you're in a much better position.
Yeah. It's good words.
That's a hard
It
question.
really
It's a
is,
hard
because
question,
I think
yeah.
you
but it's
have
more
to-
common than not.
It
I think
is.
you
It
have to take into consideration the personalities that you're dealing with.
Definitely.
My
Well said.
experience, I've been in this situation before, and you can see one is clearly a dominant type of personality, and the other is not. But if I could put it into a context that I lived, it was a decision had to be made quickly,
Mhm.
and these two individuals couldn't come to an agreement, but we still had to go on with the show. So I just thought about it, and I made the best. I made a choice based on my professional experience,
Mhm.
and I was able to look them both in the eye and say those very words. Whether it ended up being right or wrong in
Right.
the end, I had to make a decision on the fly based on my professional experience, and that is why I did what I did, and I will stand behind that. You two figure the rest of it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I mean that.
And more
very
often
well
than
said.
not, it is
Very
an
well
ego thing. A
Yeah.
little bit. Or control. Not an ego, a control thing.
Control.
You know,
Control thing.
I would describe the people that work within our group as very eager to please.
Mhm.
And I think that's very true. Like, we want to make everybody happy. We want to make sure people have a good experience. But at the end of the day, when you're put in that situation where you got to make a decision, we're going to trust our gut.
Yeah.
And I am realizing, especially coming off of the pandemic, that my style and my personality isn't for everybody. And that is okay. Like, that is completely okay.
Right, because
my
it
new-
is for most.
It-
I just have to tell you,
it
Shelby,
was.
it is, yeah.
I mean, it was for me. Like, it kept me going for years and years. And like today, I'm less about doing every auction I can, and I'm more about finding the right fit in terms of my customer base.
That's great.
And that allows me to do what I do better when
Mhm.
I'm not looking over my shoulder and trying to figure out, is this what they want? Am I doing this right? You know, you got to follow your gut to some extent, and you're going to be put in situations where you can't win. That is this business. Like, that is this business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can't
That's a
win
wise
everybody.
approach, man.
Yeah.
I really admire you for that, because you're right. Do less better than doing more and not do them as well.
Right.
Yeah, because you're raising money for organizations, and if you're clicking with them, you're going to raise more money,
Mhm.
and the end goal is that. I think something else, from my perspective, for the ED and because ringmen do have to deal with that too. You know,
Right.
we're not the lead, that's for sure. You guys are, but if we know that that's happening, we're going to be the one that gets pulled quite a bit,
Right.
right? To take something to the auctioneer, because chances are your auctioneer said, "Keep them away from me. I'm doing my job," right? And you want to raise all the money that you can. But I think it's important to also remember that a chair is not hired and ED is. And you know, that's a difficult juggle, I think, for us at times, because, you know, one is staff and one is community.
Yeah, but
Though they're both community.
But because of those dynamics, you'll often see the ED cater to the chair.
Yeah.
95% of the time.
Yeah, agreed.
Like very rarely do you see a chair and an ED go heads up, because that ED is going to do whatever that chair says, because that chair is paying for that ED to have
Yeah.
the job they have.
I'm just telling you, it does happen.
More of that story later, I'm sure.
Okay,
Okay.
last question, real quick.
Yes, good job.
You're as a
by-
professional bid spot,
Uh-huh.
right? You're in a room of 300 or 400 people. You are stretched pretty thin, right? But you're hanging on. You're doing good. Auctioneer sells it to the bidder that you have sold, $5,000. You go over, "Sir, can I have your bid number?" He or she says, "Oh, I didn't bid." Okay, all right. You unwind it. Auctioneer sells it. Okay. 10, 12 items later, it happens a second time to the same guy. Auctioneer says, "Sold, 6,500. Kelly, your bidder." And you go up, and the guy says, or gal says the same thing. "Oh, I didn't bid." What would you say to that person right at that moment?
What would I say to that person? I would say, I am asking you to honor your bid that you held up. And I typically, because I've had that happen, I will at that point say it loud enough for the table to hear them. Because that you have to rely on peer pressure at that point. You have to, and more times than not, those people sitting at the table have said to me or to them, "Oh, Bill, you did bid on that," and so I will ask them to honor their bid, right? But if it's a bidder that I recognized that already backed out of one, I'm always keeping in the back of my mind who my last bidder was, so that I can go to my backup bidder. And still save that grace. But I never used to do this, but now I do. I say it loud enough for the entire table to hear, to create that
peer pressure.
That's
a great idea.
For them to admit that they did in fact do the bidding. Because I'm not going to go to a table and I'm not going to just pull it out of my butt and say, "You bid on that, sir." No, I didn't. Well, yeah, you did. I'm not going to get into a pissing contest either with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the reason this becomes such an interesting topic when you're talking about fundraising galas specifically, or fundraising auctions, is that you have unprofessional bidders. You don't have people that are professionally bidding on product. You know, we come from a world where we are selling wholesale product to wholesale dealers at times. And in those scenarios, if you get a bid backed out on, once, twice, 3 times, that person is not allowed to come back to the facility. And because you don't have these bidders trained, there are people that are out there just having a good time, just helping.
And I think, fun.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge is you have that set amount of time to establish the ground rules, and then you hope that you don't have to correct a heckler, for lack of a better description in the moment.
It is a heckler.
Yeah, but it is a heckler, right? I mean, it is a heckler. And you see stand-up comedians like roast people from time to time, and same dynamics are at play here. Hey, you're ruining the show for everybody. You're ruining the fundraising for everybody. This problem needs to be corrected. This is the second time that it has happened. Sorry.
Yeah.
That is a very graceful way and very effective way to guilt somebody into
you have to get there.
Rather than engaging and say, "Yeah, you did. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did." That's a much better tactic, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Say it loud enough to all their friends can hear it.
Oh, I thought you bid.
Well, and if you say that you're asking them to honor their bid.
Another tactic that I've used in the past is you bid. No, I didn't. Oh, I saw I took your bid. Was it at 10,000? Oh no, it was at 8,000. Oh, okay, auctioneer, I have 8,000. Right? I've used that before because it gives them the opportunity to say, "Oh no, I wasn't at 10," and they'll
back you up.
If they think they've been caught, they'll grab a lower price point to admit, "Okay, yes, I did bid. It's just a different number." And then that way you can put the train back on the track sometimes.
Yeah, and I've actually had instances where I've been able to say, "Well, when did you stop bidding? At what level did you stop bidding?" And I would ask them, and they would say, "Well, I stopped bidding at 2,500." Okay, well, would you pay 2,500 for that?
Just like Shelby just said, you're trying to hold the item together, whatever
in any way you can.
I'm hooked up. I'm good.
Right.
Just go to 8.
Because I'll be honest with you,
even then, like, so say you sold at 10. No, I was at 8. Oh, okay, you were at 8. Gotcha. I took your bid at 10. The other bidder, would you like to give 9? And then you can actually like salvage the deal.
Right.
Because whoever your other bidder is, you can still play with that a little bit. Yeah.
As well as, it's super important for a ringman, in my opinion, to something like that will throw you guys off. You can be rolling, you got a good groove, you got your crowd, you're in a rhythm, you're moving, we're clicking, where you can just feel it. And then something like that will happen and it'll throw you guys off. You don't want your auctioneer to be thrown off because it is important. It takes them, you know what? We do a practice auction at the beginning of ours, but it takes an auctioneer 2 items to get into that rhythm and the groove, and they feel their audience and they feel the crowd, and we're doing it, and okay, we got some giving happening, blah, blah, blah. So it's important, I think, as a ringman to also be able to keep your auctioneer in the saddle, comfortable, in a good stride. Yeah. That's how I
keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yay! We're gonna pat ourselves in the back for that one, guys. I'm liking this new format. It seems much more organic and less scripted, which I greatly enjoy. So if you have any feedback,
it is not scripted at all.
You let us know.
Just ask them these questions.
Never mind the Sharpie, though.
Just never mind the Sharpie. Yeah.
Why did I use a Sharpie? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's why it's too permanent for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being here each and every week. We have a video version on YouTube. We're on the Facebooks. Come check us out on the socials. Appreciate you being with us today and in the weeks following. I'm Shelby Stokes. We're signing off.
All right, later, gang. Be good to yourself.
Yeah, go out there. Be courageous, guys. And you got this.
And go do good. Bye.
Bye.
Oh.
Cheers!
That's the thumbnail.
Cheers.